prep. Scott Sands probably didn't need any help with ACT or SAT test prep years ago. He's a national radio host, hosted the Scott Sands Show, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning. It's great to be here, and congratulations on officially taking over the show.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that very much. New challenge, but it's been a lot of fun so far, and there is, as you well know, there is no shortage of things to talk about.
No. And the first thing I want to talk about is how much your show would improve if you would get rid of the Ole Miss helmet in your bookshelf.
You bring a Bammer on, and this is what happens. Every single time. Every time.
This was your invitation, my friend.
Yeah, I hear you. Let me read this to you. This struck me as really interesting last night. Rand Paul, I'm sure you saw this, with a post on X, he says, a few people have noticed that I resisted an enthusiastic endorsement of Donald Trump during the election. But now I'm amazed by the Trump cabinet, many of whom I would have picked. I love his message to the Ukrainian warmongers, and along with his Doge initiative shows I was wrong to withhold my endorsement. So today, admittedly a little tardy, I give Donald Trump my enthusiastic endorsement. Too little, too late, some will say, but, it is sincere. There's that. Don't expect this endorsement to be fawning. I still think tariffs are a terrible idea, but Dios mio, what courage, what tenacity. Go, Donald Trump, go. Is that refreshing?
In a way, I mean, I've kind of gone through the same transformation as I think many Republicans have. I mean, just look at vice presidential pick J.D. Vance and how he has changed his tune. We've talked about that before on this show and how he changed his opinion of Donald Trump. I didn't necessarily vote enthusiastically the first time for Donald Trump. I had other candidates I liked, but he certainly has proved me wrong. And there are aspects of his character that I still question, and the way he often behaves. It's certainly enjoyable to watch, that's for sure. I mean, I don't know if you saw any of his speech yesterday, but he never fails to deliver a couple of good one-liners. I think some of this is perhaps Rand Paul positioning for another future presidential run and trying to embrace the MAGA movement for what that may mean for his future. But I think Donald Trump has changed the opinion of many neocons, many conservatives that were questioning whether or not he was the right candidate in 2020 and the right candidate in 2024 running again. I think this is reflective of a lot of people's opinions. And when it comes to cutting costs, Rand Paul always puts out his annual list of grievances on Festivus. I think that's certainly one way that Trump and Elon Musk have endeared themselves towards Rand Paul.
And Rand Paul, one of the more consistently conservative legislators in Washington, D.C. What is it simply Doge and the spending cuts that he's really embracing that you think gets him to this point?
Well, I mean, Rand Paul has always had some libertarian tendencies, thanks to his father, Ron Paul. When you start talking about auditing the Fed and Fort Knox, those are things that Rand Paul gets behind. Ending wars and a little bit of isolationism, I think, is right in Rand Paul's wheelhouse. And I agree with Rand Paul about tariffs. I don't necessarily believe tariffs are great for the American consumer in the long run, but as a threat and a negotiating tactic, I think they're great. And one benefit that some of us may enjoy if there are tariffs, especially on Canada, is we may have the more availability of some good Kentucky bourbons moving forward.
If you're into that sort of thing.
Right. And maybe I am. Perhaps you can see in the background a little bit.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I guess we could shift the camera in here and get rid of the Ole Miss helmet, give an alternate view in the background. Volodymyr Zelensky, he's doing a lot of talking, but I feel like he's doing a lot of talking that he doesn't have the ability to back up. The kid who acts like he wants to get in a fight, but deep down he really is hoping that the friend is close by so he can say, hold me back, hold me back, hold me back, when he really has either no intention of actually getting into a fight. I understand that Ukraine has been in a war for a long time, but in terms of mouth writing checks that Heine can't cash Is that where we are with Zelensky at this point? What is his play right now?
I'm not sure what his strategy is at this point, and I have a different opinion than J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and many other conservatives that I believe that we should continue to support Ukraine. I'm not thrilled with the lack of accountability and transparency on where all of our money has gone, and I don't believe the Biden administration supported Ukraine in a way that would have allowed them to win the war quickly and defend their country. I have a lot of friends in Ukraine, a lot of Ukrainians here in Northwest Ohio, who really relocated and started a life here. And I talk to friends of mine in Kyiv on a regular basis that tell me the devastation and the destruction and the terror that Russia's army has brought upon the people of Ukraine. And I do have a concern that if we coddle Vladimir Putin in Russia, that he may not be content. We may see peace in that region for the next 4 years with a peace deal struck, but there's no guarantee that Putin or the next Russian leader in 4 years won't take the opportunity to see a weakness in America and move back into Ukraine. We know that he wants that area as part of Russia, and we know that that Putin himself has expansionist plans. So I'm not completely confident that brokering a peace deal that doesn't provide long-term security for Ukraine is the best way to go. But I certainly don't want to see more death and destruction for Ukraine or Russia.
Gosh, Scott, there's so many layers to the Ukraine-Russia conversation, right? Because if we just start at the top, I think most people can agree the war needs to end, right? The senseless death
Absolutely
needs to come to an end.
We don't want to send U.S. troops. We don't want to send troops into Ukraine to help the Ukrainian army. Certainly, we don't want to keep sending bucket loads of money without any accountability. If we had sent armor, guns, and planes, and the training to maintain and use those weapons, I think that the Ukrainian people could have won the war. I think the world was shocked that Ukraine was able to hold off the Russian army for as long as they did and have many victories that were unexpected.
But isn't the truth of the matter Ukraine never was going to be able to win a war against Russia? I mean, I don't disagree with you in terms of, kudos for the ability to defend yourself, kudos for the resolve to stay in this fight and continue to defend Ukrainian territory that is rightly theirs. But without the support of the United States and Europe to a lesser degree, there was never a scenario where Ukraine was going to win. And so at some point you gotta stop it, right?
You would think if Russia had been able to fully control Ukraine, I think we would have a much more dangerous situation of urban warfare and local terror, because the people of Ukraine do not want to be under Russian control. And if Russia was victorious completely and completely took over the territory, I think we would see a lot of guerrilla warfare in the streets.
But then there's the next layer, and that is the role of the European Union and NATO. And you get the J.D. Vance speech. I feel like all of this is tied together at the Munich Security Conference. I guess it's been a week ago now, where he basically says to Europe, you're not what you used to be. You're not standing up for the ideals that you used to stand up for, and you're not contributing what you need in terms of defense. And at some point, the American gravy train is going to stop. I'm paraphrasing and maybe even taking some liberties in terms of what he said. But to me, that's the next step of this larger issue about the European Union. And are they going to invest, or are they going to stand up for themselves?
Europe should be more concerned than America, obviously, because of the proximity to Russia, and they should be more heavily invested. If NATO is going to be an alliance and a partnership, we should all be equal partners. And European allies have certainly not stepped up and contributed their fair share, to use that term, towards defending Ukraine and participating in the NATO alliance.
We'll pick this conversation up on the other side of a timeout. Visiting with Scott Sands. He's host of the Scott Sands Show, national radio host and contributor here at SuperTalk Mississippi as of late. We certainly appreciate that. Really interesting comments from the Secretary General of NATO. And we talked about this earlier in the week. What he's saying is very different than what is being portrayed by much of the media, the legacy media, about what's happening and what the impact of J.D. Vance's speech in Munich was last week. We'll pick the conversation up there on the other side of this timeout. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Back on MRC SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for being with us on this chilly Thursday morning. Cold where Scott Sands is, cold where you sit this morning as well. Thanks for joining us. C-Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. You want to jump in and be a part of the conversation, that's the best way for you to do it. So, Scott, the Secretary General of NATO had some interesting comments earlier in the week where he talked about the fact that since Donald Trump was inaugurated, European countries have upped their expenditures into NATO by about $700 million, but they've still got a long way to go. And he didn't paint the United States as quite the same villain that much of the media has painted the United States over them saying, look, Europe's got to contribute more, and if they don't, you're going to be on your own. We'll back out of this.
I think the United Nations may want to sit this one out. When you look at their success rate in places like Bosnia, Rwanda, they've had more failures than Mississippi State's football team this season. Sorry, I know I'm not making friends this morning, but they may want to sit this one out when you talk about
shots. If you're keeping score at home, he is offended the folks at Oxford, offended the folks in Starkville, making friends and influencing people. Scott Sands.
Hattiesburg, you're next. No, I love I love Ole Miss and State and USM. This is a power grab for the United Nations,
we don't believe you.
Which is afraid of losing their relevance under Donald Trump. And I think many Americans agree that the United Nations has been a complete waste of taxpayer money and has been largely ineffective around the world, whether it be in wartime conflicts, whether it's dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and numerous other issues you could list. The absurdity of some of the nations who sit on the UN Security Council and have veto power is plain as day.
Philip in Walthall County says the Germans are apoplectic about Vance's comments on free speech, yet they're conducting raids on people based on internet posts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do not look at my X screen.
Yeah, I mean the story on 60 Minutes where they spent 12 minutes of actual time on the air going through and almost cheerleading the way that the German state was operating in terms of arresting people for online posts and alleged hate speech. That's a pretty concerning way to govern in that part of the world.
Well, I mean, if you're CBS News, have you seen all the memes directed at Margaret and other hosts on CBS? They're probably in favor of that kind of policy to defend their own reputation.
Yeah, maybe so. Margaret Brennan, we'll see if she continues down that road of. I mean, it's been bad. I mean, it's every single week on Face the Nation. There's a new clip, a new meme from Margaret Brennan where you're like, how are you doing this? Like, what do you know?
Who's writing her scripts and allowing this to continue?
Yeah. Kash Patel. We got the timeline from Mark Wayne Mullen, the senator from Oklahoma, says that cloture vote comes this morning, and at 1:45 Eastern time this afternoon, he is going to be confirmed. What's that vote going to look like?
Probably about the same as it has been on the last couple of nominees, probably a 51-49 or so line, just barely enough. Last time I was on your show, Richard, I believe I said it wouldn't surprise me if at least one of these nominees failed to pass, but the fact that RFK has made it through, Kristi Noem made it through, I think it's looking good for Kash Patel. That's going to energize much of the MAGA base, but it's going to be a very narrow vote.
Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith was on with me yesterday, and I asked her this. There obviously were Republicans who had serious and legitimate questions about a lot of the cabinet nominees proposed by Donald Trump, and yet we have seen confirmation after confirmation. I'm wondering if the resolve of Republicans has changed based on the grandstanding that we've seen from some Democrats during these confirmation hearings, to the point where even people who are like, I'm not sure that that's really the person that I want in this cabinet position as a Republican, but they see the sideshow and the craziness that people like, whether you're talking about Chris Mitchell or you're talking about Elizabeth Warren or pick your senator. Has that helped the cause of these nominees by Donald Trump?
Are you saying that Republican senators have suddenly developed a spine, a backbone? That would surprise me, at least long term. Look,
Murphy,
I think
yeah.
I think it's valid to question some of the credentials and potential agendas of some of these nominees. But at the end of the day, this is the president's cabinet. It's his pick, and he's going to be the one judged at the end of the day. And in 2 years, there's another election. There's another presidential election in 4 years. If these cabinet picks don't do a good job, if Donald Trump's agenda fails, that should be reflected by the voters in 2 and 4 years.
It was really fascinating. A week or two ago, Donald Trump was asked about J.D. Vance as the next president of the United States, and he was not ready to go there. And maybe that's politically savvy on the part of Donald Trump. Did that surprise you, though, at all, that there was
not at all
full? Really?
Have you ever seen The Apprentice? Donald Trump loves the drama. I don't think he's going to. He's producing a television show in addition to running the country. He wants a little drama. And I think that that healthy competition among potential Republican presidential contenders will be a good thing. It's way too early to endorse J.D. Vance, but I think he has won the support of many of Donald Trump's supporters just by how articulate he is. But there's a deep bench of the Republican Party, especially when you compare it to the Democrat bench. And I think Donald Trump wants to see how that plays out over the next few years.
You heard it here first from Scott Sands. Omarosa going to make a run at the presidency in 3.5 years. One last thing with you. The idea of a Doge dividend for American citizens, American taxpayers. This seems to be the newest idea that's being floated by Elon Musk, and Donald Trump says he doesn't hate the plan, whether it's a $5,000 check or some other amount. But the idea that we found this waste, we're cutting the waste, it's money that was already being spent, and so 20% of this we're going to return to the American people. You like that idea, or should the focus be on exclusively on eliminating debt and reducing the deficit?
I've got mixed feelings about this. I think we would all love to receive a refund check from the government. Any sort of bonus money is a good thing. But long term, I think I would rather see us pay down our debt, reduce taxes, which benefits everybody. And suddenly, if you inject billions of dollars into the economy, there's a risk that could drive up inflation without stimulating the economy. I don't know if you're a fan of The West Wing. I think Jed Bartlett might be the only Democrat I would vote for as president. But there seems to be a scene for everything happening in the world today out of West Wing. And if you look at their experience with stimulus checks, many Americans right now with our economy and the credit card debt we have would probably use it to pay down credit card debt rather than going out to make a retail purchase, which would, in fact, stimulate the economy. You just send out a bunch of money. There is that risk that it will drive up inflation even higher than what it is today. I'd rather pay down the debt and figure out a way, enact the long-term tax cuts and Jobs Act and help the economy long-term rather than a short-term stimulus, which was, if you'll recall, largely ineffective during COVID.
It's funny you say that about the West Wing, because I feel like we are living in a world right now where television characters have become real life. Like, we are living in a world that is a combination of President Jed Bartlett, Senator Frank Underwood, and then some combination of Axe Capital and Chuck, the U.S. Attorney.
There is an X account which I follow. I think it's Lemon Lyman Com. It's No Context West Wing. And there is literally a clip posted every day based on whatever the headline is. I mean, they've talked about abolishing the penny. We've talked about assassinating foreign leaders. Every day there is a clip you could pull from West Wing that addresses the headline of the day.
West Wing, House of Cards, and Billions. That's the world that we are living in, an amalgamation of those three shows. Scott, always appreciate your time. Enjoy the conversations. Looks forward to chatting with you soon.
Richard, thanks for having me on.
Scott Sands, national radio host. The Scott Sands Show. Let me try that one more time. The Scott Sands Show. Say it really fast. Put it all together. Enjoying the visits with Scott. We'll get to some of your messages on the C Spire text line when we come back, especially as it pertains to the Doge dividend. Some of you weighing in on that. 601-879-4395 is the number. Quick timeout. Mornings with Richard Cross returns after this break on SuperTalk Mississippi.